Hi everyone. So today I am going to read a poetry selection. This book is called Harriet and the Promised Land, and it's by a man called whose name is Jacob Lawrence. Now, Jacob Lawrence is not only the writer of this poem, but he is also the illustrator. So the front cover is an example of the pictures that you will see in the book, and as you can tell, they're very unique. If you take a look at this, you'll see that you can tell that there's a woman here, and there's people running. There's someone actually in the river, and they're carrying things. So you can see that there's definite shapes in here that are something that is known to us, but they're not in the shape of like a figure that you would see drawn with a pencil, where there's like an outline and you can see details. This artist has a very particular way of creating their art, almost like it's blotches, similar to camouflage. So you really have to take a good look at what you see in these pictures, and what I want you to notice is that they will help tell the story of the poem just as much as the words will. In fact, maybe a little more. This woman right here, here's something that you may notice in the book. The woman right here, she has this giant hand. That giant hand is completely out of proportion, which means it doesn't fit the size of her body. It's much bigger. So we'll be taking a look at how things like that play into the story of the poem. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with the book. Now, one of the things that I wanted to read to you about this book is the introduction, and it's by the author-illustrator, Jacob Lawrence, and it will give you insight into why why he wrote this book, why he wrote this poem, and what his inspiration was for it. Now, he dedicates this book to the courageous women of America. And what he says here in his introduction is that the United States is a great country. It is a great country because of people like John Brown, Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, Sojourner Truth, and Harriet Tubman. Now, just to let you know, those are all people that helped abolish or get rid of slavery of the African American people in our country when that was happening. He continues, I recall learning of Harriet Tubman from my mother and from many school teachers and librarians within New York's Harlem community, with whom I had the opportunity of coming in contact when I was a very young boy of about 5 or 6 years of age. Like so many young people who had this opportunity, I will always remember the drama and the exploits of Harriet. I was told that Harriet Tubman was born a slave and that she fled her slave masters just prior to the Civil War. She organized other slaves and, moving through the Underground Railroad, made 19 trips from south to north, always following the North Star, until she and the other runaway slaves reached the vast, snowy fields of Canada. It was a perilous journey. The slave owners and the hound dogs were always on their tracks, searching for runaway slaves. Harriet Tubman was a very daring and brave woman. So they were actually, the slave owners were actually hunting the people that were trying to escape with their dogs, their hunting dogs. Wouldn't have been a pretty picture if they had caught them, right? But Harriet Tubman chose to lead these people over and over again. The author continues, American history has always been one of my favorite subjects. Given the opportunity to select a subject from American history, I chose to do a number of paintings in tribute to Harriet Tubman, a most remarkable woman, and in doing so also to pay tribute and to honor my late mother, Rosalie, and to my wife, Gwen. There are 3 women who have contributed much to making it possible for me to develop, to live, to grow, and to fully appreciate the challenges and the beauty of life in general, and to express through the elements of color, line, texture, shape, and value the wisdom of an almighty God. So in this, what I got from that, from reading this, is that he chose a woman because women have been very influential to him, and he also chose a historical figure that was a woman but was extremely brave. And another thing he tells you is that his art is how he uses this book to communicate to the reader that there is a presence of God as well. Okay, let's get started. This is the story of Harriet Tubman, born a slave in Maryland around 1820, who made a daring escape to the North and freedom. To risk her life, she returned 19 times to lead over 300 of her people to the Promised Land. Now, the Promised Land is a story about Moses from the Bible and how he led his people to safety. So let's see if we can see that emulated in the writing here. Harriet, born a slave. I noticed the North Star. Work for your master from your cradle to your grave. I see that everyone in this picture has a task, and they look very busy. Harriet clean, Harriet sweep, Harriet rock the child to sleep. It's not her child. I can tell that. She even takes care of others' children. Harriet, hear tell about the Promised Land. There's the Promised Land again, a reference to God's story about Moses. Harriet, hear tell about the Promised Land, how Moses led the slaves over Egypt's sand, how Pharaoh's heart was hard as stone, how the Lord told Moses he was not alone. There's the North Star again. Harriet, pray to the Lord at night for strength to free your people when the time is right. Harriet, grow bigger. Harriet, grow stronger. Harriet, work harder. Harriet, work longer. That's all she does. Look at how big her hand is. That's the hand that she works with. She must have a big hand to do all of those things for someone else. Then, Harriet got the sign that the time was right. She cried, "Brothers, sisters, I'll lead you tonight." I noticed that she's like pointing at the North Star. That's what it looks like. I wonder if the illustrator did that on purpose. The North Star shone to light Harriet's way, and they marched by night and they slept by day. Some were afraid, but none turned back. For close at their heels howled the bloodhound pack. Ooh, look at this picture. There's so much to see. I can tell that there's like animals they must be in a forest. And they're walking through. Oh, and I just caught a glimpse. Even right here, you can see like there's people hiding in the trees. Well, they must have been hiding if the slave masters were coming after them. But what a clever place to hide them. You really had to look hard to see them. Okay. A snake said, hiss. An owl said, whoo. Harriet said, we are coming through. A runaway slave with a price on her head. I'll be free, said Harriet, or I'll be dead. She's like, I'm not going back. Oh, and there's the star, the North Star. And they're going towards it. There it is again. And her big hand, pointing towards the North Star, like she knows where to go. She said, believe in the Lord. She said, believe in me. She said, brothers, sisters, we're going to be free. They slept in a barn with the barnyard fowl, and Harriet kept watch like a barnyard owl. Good people gave them food to eat and a chance to rest their weary feet. Okay, when I look at this, I immediately see this guy's big hands. And like that looked kind of strange to me until I noticed he's got a shoe. Because he's taking off her shoes so she can rest her weary feet. So good people along the way helped them. They gave Harriet chickens to disguise the runaway slave from spying eyes. So they covered one of the runaway slaves in chickens so that she wouldn't get caught. And look, they're walking towards that North Star again. Now you notice this picture's all white. Okay, that's strange. Let's read. Then the north wind howled like a bloodhound pack, but none were afraid and none turned back. Harriet led them across the snow toward the promised land as Moses led his people across the burning sand. So just like a desert that Moses had to go through, she's going through the snow. They marched through the cold, they marched through the heat, and the only sound was their marching feet. Now they marched by day, now they marched by night. Still, the promised land was not in sight. Now Harriet grew weary and sick at heart. Now the Lord sent Harriet a chariot. There it is. Something to help them get through to freedom. And they're going straight towards the North Star. The chariot was sent by the Lord's own hand, and Harriet rode to the chariot to the promised land. These guys look happy to see them. Oh, it's like they arrived like, hey, you're here. Harriet, born to be free, led her people to liberty. The end. So I hope you got a little glimpse into what Harriet Tubman did for the African American people that were enslaved before the Civil War. And I also hope that you saw how artwork that isn't what we consider to be normal or perfect, even if it looks a little strange, still tells a lot of the story in a book.